In the end, if we can get together, if we can get the festivals to grow, we can make photography more important in the artistic world in general, and that can be good for everyone. This is more or less the idea that we're running.
Welcome to Subtext and Discourse Art World podcast, where we highlight unique perspectives on contemporary art and photography. I'm your host, Michael Dooney. My guest today is Pablo Giori, a contemporary historian and founder of the Experimental Photography Festival in Barcelona. His latest initiative is the International Photography Festivals Association, which will host its first gathering this July, bringing together festival directors, curators, and cultural producers from around the world. A quick reminder to please subscribe to Subtext and Discourse Art World podcast wherever you get your podcast. It helps to grow the show and enable others to learn about my guests. Now, without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Pablo Giori. Where I was looking back over how we got in touch, and I'd put together a list of international photo festivals around the world, and you'd written to me and said, hey, put on the Experimental Photo Festival in Barcelona, which I'd never heard of. So that was cool. And then you've actually put together a huge list of photo festivals, which we were just speaking before, has now hit 600 or 601 yes. Festivals.
601, but it will grow soon, as you know, always. Every week, every 2 weeks, we have more festivals. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's insane. But I mean, that's globally. And so around the world, there's that many photography festivals.
Sure. I think that's the number people might keep in mind for understanding why we are doing what we are going to be talking today, because they are 600 photo festivals in the world. I have never ever thought that we will never arrive to this number of festivals. And for sure, those are the festivals that we know, but there must be others, and this is why we engage all our community to saying, okay, if you check on the list and there is someone new, just send us an email with the details, we will contact them.
Yeah, definitely. Because one of the big things that I wanted to talk to you about is something that's happening later this year for the first time. So you're looking at starting an association or an International Photography Festivals Association, and then in July, you're having the first in-person meeting, or you're organizing a conference or something around this theme. So what was the inspiration really to have a conference about photography festivals?
This is part of the work that we have been doing on researching about festivals. At the beginning, we started thinking in our students, because we have a festival in school. We can talk about this later. But all our students were asking where they can send their works. I mean, I was doing mentorship and they say, okay, but I want a festival for this, I want a festival for this project or this other. And we start looking for festivals. Then we found 100, 200, 300. And when we arrived to 300, just half of the ones that we have now, we said we need to do something with them. I mean, we need to connect. We need to create community, because there are no. And we started doing the research. That was the moment when we found your database, and we kindly asked you to put also our festivals in there. And at that point, we were also contacting with other associations and festivals. We are a founding member of the Spanish and Portuguese associations of festivals. We are part also of the network of analog photography festivals in Europe. We are part of the European Association Festivals. I mean, we are part of different networks. We know other networks, and we say, okay, but there are no really international network. The Spanish or the French one, Resolux, they are working on a French context, on the things that they talk, or the problems or the needs in a national level, so to say. It's not exactly the same, the conversations that we can have internationally. And then we say, okay, we need to get together, because what can a festival from Spain or one from Mexico, Argentina, Norway, and Bucharest, or even Hong Kong can be really powerful, as a conversation, trying to know the diversity of the festivals, the way we organize, but also to give new inputs to the small festivals to get bigger, because what we think is, from one side, we need to do bigger festivals, we need to do better festivals, we need to learn how to do this, and this is the only way is exchanging different criteria. We need to find more funding, and then in the end, what is going to happen with photography worldwide is going to be that people is going to take it more importance of it, In the end, if we can get together, if we can get the festivals to grow, we can make photography more important in the artistic world in general. And that can be good for everyone. This is more or less the idea that we're running. And For that, we have two tools. One is creating an association. At least at the beginning, we need to start working on it. And we say, okay, makes no sense to start creating an association before knowing the festivals. That's why we call all the festivals to 4 different meetings in Spanish, English, French, and Italian for having a first conversation. Then we invite them, that is more or less the point now, to come to Barcelona for the first meeting, because we think that we need to get together, at least to know how many festivals are actively involved in this kind of networking and internationalization. And then we want to create the association and then see how we can get together and how can we work when we connect. But we're pretty sure that, at least it's my experience with experimental photo festivals, that we need to get together a couple of days. From there, we're going to have a clear idea who I'm working with, what they want, what can we do together, who they are. First we need to become friends, and then we can create something together.
So is it a conference? It's like an international gathering? Well, who's the intended audience, actually? Because it's not a photo festival, so I don't think you're saying you want photographers to come to the international meeting. Is it for curators or people that organize festivals? Like, who is your target audience?
I mean, our idea for sure is that the artists are not officially invited. I mean, they can come, but it's not for them. They have 600 other photography festivals in the world to present their work. Yeah. This is a professional, you can call it festival, you can call it gathering, you can call it congress. I mean, I think these kind of categories are not so important. Even in our festival, we call them summer camp, because it's in summer and it's a camp. It's a horizontal place of meeting of festivals. We know that it's professional. That means that we are calling for directors, curators, organizers, those who are working in institutions that help festivals, those working in communication, in accountability, all those who are collaborating or working in photo festivals. Our idea is that we are talking about more or less between 3,000 and 6,000 people worldwide, and we want them to come, because if you're doing communication, Instagram accounts for photography festivals, you want to meet someone else that is doing communication for another festival. If you're a director, you want to meet another director. If you're doing accountability, you want to know how other festivals do accountability in their country. I mean, this is kind of the idea, that all the people working on festivals are invited to come.
Yeah. And will you have panel discussions, or is it mostly about networking and meeting people? Is there a dinner? Like, is there a format? Has it already been put together?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, if you check our webpage, we have the program now. The program starts with a presentation of an exhibition, because this is also the first week of Experimental Photo Festival. That means that we have all the opening of the exhibitions for our festival. We have opening of exhibitions every night. And then we have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, full of activities. The idea, obviously, is working on doing networking, but there are also other contents related mainly to 2 different things. One is what we want to do with this association. How do we want to organize ourselves in the future? And the other thing is, how can we get more modern festivals? This is how we work with economical transparency, gender equality, ecology. I mean, these kind of the subjects that, at least in Europe and in the US, are the subjects more important, at least to get more modern, also in the way that we organize our festivals. And then we have these 3 parts. One is the networking between the festivals, because we want all the festivals to exchange exhibitions. This is going to be one of the goals of the more practical part of it. Networking, thinking on the association of the future that we want to build, and also how can we make more modern festivals. For example, what happened with open calls? Is it modern or not to have open calls? How the open calls must be done, the recommendations. And also we are going to present the state of the festivals in the world. I mean, now we have a list of festivals, but we don't have any other information about them. We are going to start at the end of this month sending to all the festivals a form where they are going to be invited to send us their information for us to know how many people work in the festival, in which moment of the year is done, how many audiences they have, and that will allow us really to have an idea of what does it means photography festivals in the world in general. The first report on the states of the festival, photo festivals worldwide, that will be another thing. And the festival is festival or the meeting. We call it meeting because we don't want also to mix with Experimental Photo Festival, that is kind of a festival. We call it the meeting. The first IPFA meeting will be based on these 4 ideas. Is full Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Now in our webpage, we don't have a lot of activities because I'm talking and negotiating with other associations of festivals. The one that I say from Spain, from France, and the ones of analog photography. There is one in the north of Europe. There are different associations that they might want to do a meeting on Sunday morning. We are going to give them the space for them to get together also inside of our general meeting. But we are trying to close that during these months. We are going to start voting probably this week in the WhatsApp group. We have a WhatsApp group, and then we have a big newsletter with more than 1,000 email addresses. We will debate the best date for the next round of meetings. We are meeting every month for the details. And for sure, on the next meeting together, we will keep on the debate about the program. I mean, the program is open. This is the proposal from our side, but we are debating with all the festivals what they need. In the end, we want to do the best meeting for what the festivals needs. And we know a couple of different interests from our side because we're in contact with festivals, but we don't know all of them. You know, the program might have changes still last minute. The most important is that people come, and then we will find the best way to get together.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds really exciting. Like, what do you hope will come out of this initial gathering?
What I hope people to come. That's the most important thing. Now we have people that has bought already their tickets and everything. We have 5 festivals. We have 20 people more or less. I mean, that is kind of good for being the first week that we have started selling the tickets. My goal is to have at least 50 festivals. I think the biggest meeting has been one I can't remember if it was in Greece or France, of 20 festivals. For sure, we want to have more. And then what I want them is to go back home with something real, you know, to say, okay, I went there, I invest my money and my time, I met 5 festivals, I exchanged exhibitions with a couple of them, and now I want to do this. You know, this is kind of what I am as the coordinator of the meeting. That's what I'm thinking. What do we have to do on the activities for people to go back home saying, okay, this makes sense, and I'm going to go back next year, you know?
Yeah. No, it sounds really good because is it the first week of July or the first couple of days in July?
From the 3 to the 6th of July, and then Arles festivals in France is starting on the 7th. That's why we choose this weekend to put all the activities, because then people can directly go to France. It's kind of 3 hours and a half from here, and might be pretty easy for them to go to Arles. That is really good. If someone then wants to come back for Experimental Photo Festival, that's good. And if not, they can keep visiting the rest of Europe. It's a really good time for being in town.
Yeah, absolutely. People are listening that weren't already aware of the International Photography Festival Association and like the upcoming conference. Where's the best place they could find information about this?
They can get in our webpage, photographyfestivalsassociation.com, or you can just check our Instagram, Photography Festivals. I mean, it's kind of the most easy way. If you just put Photography Festival Association on Google, it will come up to you. We have the webpage in Spanish, English, French, and Italian. And now you can see the complete program. You can buy the tickets, the accommodations. You can see the 600 festivals that we have. Also the open calls of the rest of the festivals that we are sharing. And also a manifesto that we shared that was part of the first part of the campaign for the meeting. We wanted to know more or less the support from the festivals, because there is 600. We send them to sign up a manifest to support the meeting. In that manifest, we have now 400 signatures from 211 festivals. That means that at least 30-something% of all the festivals on the world has signed up saying that they consider that the meeting was an interesting event. That doesn't make them mandatory to come, but at least they are receiving our information. They consider the activity is interested, and they come from 68 countries, and they were also 250 curators and photographers that say that they support the events. That means that having 400 signatures for us was huge. I mean, we have never thought in having so much support for the event. I think that is a good starting point for the rest of the activities that we are going to have this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it sounds really good.
Then I think I can tell you a couple of more details about this. Just two other things that we are going to start doing now. One is the ticketing for the event. From our side, we always work with gender equality and economical transparency because we like to create communities, and we know that communities needs to have all the information. This event is supported by the government of Catalonia. Catalonia is a part of Spain, one of the autonomous communities. The government of Catalonia is supporting our event. They give us 40% of what we do. I mean, if we spend 10,000, they give us 4. If we spend 20, they give us 8, more or less. That's kind of the idea. And for that reason, we need to charge a little bit for the event because we have to pay for the people, renting, graphic design, webpage, blah, blah, blah. We need to pay things. And that's why we charge 90 euros for the event to compensate the rest of the amount of money that we need to receive from our side. We need to create some money. And also we receive some funding from their side. And the price is 90 euros for the 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And lunch is included for the 3 days. I have the feeling that the price is pretty cheap. For sure, you are going to spend much more money on your plane tickets. That's really on the entrance fee, but we wanted really to do it as cheap as possible. And the second thing is that we have a university accommodation that is the same one that we use for our festival, that is on the University of Barcelona. They have this kind of students' residency. We have negotiated with them for having people there because the second big problem that we have in Barcelona is the accommodation, not just the plane tickets that are pretty expensive, but also the accommodation. Prices get really crazy in summer, really crazy. That's why we get this collaboration with the university, and people can stay on our university accommodation for just 90 euros in an individual room. It's not the most fancy shared bathroom, these kind of things more, but at least you have an individual room or a double room if you want, but you are not staying in a hostel with 16 people or paying 100 euros per night. That is kind of the minimum in any hotel downtown, and it's good because we have breakfast included, and the breakfast, everyone is having breakfast together on the same place, and then you can take the metro and come to the festival together. I think that's a good possibility also for staying at the festival. We don't want anyone from any place of the world saying that the festival is expensive, and that's why we have worked for having a ticket as cheap as possible, and also the accommodation as cheap as possible. Maybe from someone from Australia or even Spain or Norway, it's not a lot of money, but for sure for Latin American countries or other countries, it's pretty expensive. We have been working with this. That's why we took a little bit longer than what we wanted to show and say how much the ticket will cost and everything. But now we're happy to say that we have made an effort to make it as cheap as possible, at least for this first year. That are the prices.
And I noticed, you've already sent me an invitation letter, but if people are within the industry and they want to apply for arts funding, then you're also open to supporting them by writing them an invitation letter. So you're kind of on board with that kind of process as well.
Sure. Whatever you need from our side, we're open to help you. We know it's hard. Mainly plane tickets now are hard. And if we can help you in whatever way, just send us an email and we will answer you in less than 24 hours. That is normally our time of answering. And send you the letter. That's kind of the most important. You need to find your founding coming.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to attending. And I think the fact that it's the day before ARL starts, it's easy to justify participating because people are already traveling to ARL. And it's like, I can just take a few extra days and go to Barcelona before that. So I think that's also good for coordinating, certainly international travel. And I think for people locally as well, that's also really helpful. So that's good. I'm looking forward to that. I think already talking to you and hearing your enthusiasm about it, it's really great how passionate you are about this. And I suppose knowing a bit about the festival you're organizing or the conference that you're organizing, I'm curious, and I imagine other people listening are also curious how you kind of got to this point. Because when I looked at some of your bio, you're actually an academic in contemporary history. And among other things, you made a documentary about the history of punk in Argentina. So let's start with that and then say how you kind of caught the photo bug.
Great. That's a long story. I'm going to try to do it as short as possible and comprehensive. From one side, I keep with my more academical interests in photography. Mainly, I have been working with other things, as you mentioned. I started working when I was younger, so to say, with subcultures, punk groups, mainly music, group of musics, and what young people did when they went to concerts, pretty on a Pierre Bourdieu perspective, sociology, anthropology, trying to know what people were learning on these communities. That's kind of the idea. Because what I saw when I
Okay.
was young is on these punk movements, people get to know this philosophy of do it yourself. They know how to self organize themselves. They are not just waiting for others to tell them what they have to do, but they learn when they are young in these communities how to organize themselves. And I was pretty interested in this kind of what you learn when you are young from if you go to I don't know, a football club, or if you go to a discotheque. I mean, this kind of different youth that we have, what do
Yeah.
you learn differently from one or the other? And I was really surprised with these young people. That was when I was in Argentina. I did my thing on that, and then documentary about that. Pretty nice. I really like it. And then when I came to Spain to do my master thesis and my PhD, I started working with other communities of cultural movements in Spain and also in Canada, related a
Oh,
little bit
okay.
with nationalism in Quebec and Catalonia.
Wow, okay.
It's kind of another movement, another time of my life,
Yeah.
but I was really interested on the same idea, what people is learning in these kind of movements. That was kind of the idea, doing a history and also interviewing them to know what they were learning on this kind of civil society, music, and traditional culture movements. I did my PhD between Canada and Catalonia. That's why I also speak French. And then I get my PhD and I start working more with photography because I was writing a book about a photographer from Catalonia. He's called Pere Català. He's an
Ah,
avant-garde
yes.
photographer in the 30s, one of the most important representatives of the avant-garde in Spain. And I was working with him and his family for doing a biography. It's pretty nice because it's a huge biography of a photographer. I mean, we normally don't have so much information on the daily work of a photographer because you normally just have the photos, but not. But this guy, he was a historian. His family were different historians also, and they were just saving all the information. Then we get the huge archive of what this guy, Pere Català, was doing on his full
Wow.
life. And then he also was interested in literature, and then we made things with that. Anyway, and I started doing a biography of a photographer from Catalonia. And then I said, okay, why, for understanding more this character, to make this biography, I really need to do photography myself, because for understanding even the timings or what you are doing with your hands, when you are used to have a camera in your hands, you need to do photography. If not, you can get an approach from a theoretical point of view, historian, but you will never, ever get into the character. I was kind of thinking in a theater, when you are an actor and you need to become your character. I say, okay, how can I
Yeah.
become this guy for approaching as much as possible to the context?
Wow, that's really interesting because relating that back to the punk stuff and music and everything else, were you into the music and were you so removed from photography that you didn't feel any closeness to it, that's why you thought I have to pick up a camera and see what this is about?
Yes. I mean, I also learned how to do movies when I did the movies, and I also was doing pictures for the concerts, and I was also organizing concerts because we have kind of a cultural producer in Argentina at that time. I had also a program at the radio. I mean, there are different years. The story is like 15,
Yeah.
20 years. That's why you might have the feeling that there are so many things at the same time, as they are kind of linearly, there are different moments of my life. And then I also co-organized a festival in the US with the Smithsonian Institution with popular culture in Catalonia. It was a huge festival. I collaborated with that. And then I realized that it was possible really to do an international festival that was not so hard, as they said, with all my experience. And then I say, okay, I work with this festival. And then I was working with analog photography, trying to know better how it was. I published this book.
You published a book? Like, what was the book that you published?
I published a book about this photographer.
Ah, right. Yes, yeah, about the Catalonian photographer.
Yes.
I wasn't sure if you meant your photography.
And then I published a book of my work, but that is kind of the next level, if you're asking. Then when we get all this information, I started doing double exposure because that was mainly what this guy was doing. Not double exposure, but photo montage and collage, photo collage. And I thought that the more closely connected with that was double exposure in camera, analog double exposure. And we start with Laura Ligari, a movement called Film Swap Worldwide, of exchanging 35 mils films in different parts of the world. I mean, I take pictures of Barcelona and then I send the film to someone somewhere, and then the other person does this film again, and then we create double exposures from two different places of the world in camera directly.
How did you organize it?
Instagram.
Oh, through Instagram.
Yes, we started everything with Instagram. This was a huge community on 2014 or so. Instagram was huge. And we were just looking for double exposure people, and we just say, okay, I mean, we had a big, huge list of cities, and then we were just looking for people doing double exposures on those cities, and we just send them a message. Okay, do you want to participate in this project? You need to prepare one film and send me one film, and I will do the same. And then let's see what the results are.
Yeah, nice. Because I remember it from, I think when I was getting into photography in the early 2000s, I remember the Lomographic Society had similar things, and there were like Flickr groups where people had like film swaps, and you double expose the film, send it to somebody on the other side of the world.
That's pretty fun. We did it big. We did it with 120 photographers from 100 cities or so in the world. That was the moment when the films were not so expensive. I mean, I think we pay 5, 6, 7 euros per roll. Now with 70 euros is crazy. I will never ever send 17 euros for free. But at that moment, that was possible. And that was the moment when I published this book that is called Unexpected Inhabitants. It was a result of this work. And then on the other side, you have 12 key ideas on how to do double exposures and film swap, because there were any book talking about this technique. And then I did 14 exhibitions in different parts of the world. And then with the information that I get from doing these festivals in America with the Smithsonian and the team that we work with is here, and the database of 100 photographers, we said, okay, why not to create a festival here in Barcelona? Yes. And that was kind of the moment when we said, okay, why not? And we started with the first experimental photo festival. It was in January. I mean, we were working all 2019, but it was in January 2020 in winter. And it was
in the COVID year.
It was the best festival of 2020 because I think it was the only.
It was the only one.
It happens on the 20, 21, and 22 of January or so. I don't know if there were other festivals in February or not, but the rest of them were canceled. We were the best festival of 2020.
Wow. So how did the first festival then? Because I guess you wouldn't have done anything like that before. Like that was the first time you'd ever organized a photo festival or a festival at all. But then photography, experimental photography, it's very niche.
Yes and no at the same time. I mean, I have the feeling that experimental photography has been done since the beginning. I mean, it's older than commercial photography for sure. People have been doing that for 270 years, but they don't know it. That's the only thing. I mean, all those who are doing double exposure, they don't consider themselves sometimes as experimental photographers, but they are. You know, a lot of them that are doing instant photography, they do. Or those who are doing embroidery and photography or doing cyanotype. I mean, we have more than 144 techniques of experimental photography. That means that mainly everyone going outside of industrial traditional photography is doing some kind of experimental photography. That means that now everyone has the feeling that it's kind of a niche, but if you get deeper on the thing, almost everyone is doing experimental photography in some kind of the different senses, you know? Yeah. And that's why we are trying to make people to realize that some of the things that they are doing are creative, alternative, historical, experimental, and that they can grow this interest in doing new kind of images, because the industrial photography, from our side at least, is too repetitive. You know, the industry has just limited so much the way we create images that we don't feel being artists or being photographers when we do these kind of images. The only way is putting more energy, putting more handmade work, putting more digital edition, or doing something special. And that's the moment when experimental photography comes and say, okay, you have these 144 tools, use them to express yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And what I also noticed is that there's a real emphasis on the physicality of photography. And I guess there's a lot to do with analog processes and historical processes. And what I was wondering is, can you have experimental digital photography?
Sure.
Yeah.
Have you seen any LiDAR radar photography?
I don't know what that is.
You can do photography with a radar. You get the idea of a radar. I think he's in Australia, Chirag Jindal. You can find him. We have a conference open in our YouTube channel. If you put Chirag Jindal, he has been doing a project with radars. It's called LiDAR radar. It's a special kind of radar. You get the points on a map, and with 3D, you can really create a 3D image exactly as a photography, seeing things that you can see. For example, in the middle of the rock. If you have a rock that has air in the middle of, if you have caverns in the middle of the rock, this is the case that Chirag is working more, you can really have a 3D image of the city and then also on what is happening on the ground.
Oh, wow.
This is experimental because this is the new technology that is helping us to see something that we can't see with our eyes, not in analog, not in digital, not with our mobile phones. This is what we really need to think when we think about digital experimental photography. That is something new, and that is where experimentation in digital photography is coming.
I guess it's still a kind of image capturing, isn't it? Like you're not synthesizing an image, you're still capturing, let's say, reality.
I have recorded a webinar that you can also find on our YouTube channel of the 12 photography revolutions, so to say, 12. I think it's called the 12 revolutions or so. And in digital, there are 2 revolutions. The first one is when you can do an analog photography with the digital camera. I mean, you can do exactly the same with the digital and an analog one. But then the next revolution, as the one that I said with Chirag Jindal, is that in digital, you can do things that analog has never, ever been able to do, and not our eyes.
Ah, yes.
The first revolution is chronophotography, or when at the end of the 19th century, when photography were able to decide the races, who win a race. I can't find the word now. That was the first
photo finish.
Photo finish, yes. That's the first revolution because that was the moment when analog photography was able to see more than our eyes. The second revolution was when we were able to build a chip that was able to capture exactly the same. And then the third huge revolution is the real digital revolution. It's not copying analog, but it's really, and that's when you can, by a computer, generate an image that we are not able to see with any other instrument. And this is the perfect example with radars.
Yeah, wow, that's fascinating. So going back to the festival, this year would be the 6th edition of the festival. How is it? Obviously, it's an experimental photo festival, but how else does it differentiate itself from other festivals?
I think there are a couple of differences. When we start, we wanted really to do it differently from other festivals. The first thing is that we organize it as a summer camp. This means you have 5-6 days, you stay in town, you come for the festival all the time. You have conferences during 5 days and also workshops. We are going to present the workshops probably next week. We have 64 workshops or so. I mean, we are the biggest festival in the world regarding workshops because that's the moment when we think that you are going to learn something. When you are with the artist and 7 other participants learning directly a technique with the artists come from all over the world. You stay there for 4 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours. And that is when you are going to get deep into what you are doing. It's not the same. It's a pretty active attitude. That's what we want to do. That's why we call the people on our festival participants, because they do participate. All of those who buy a ticket, they do workshops. The workshop for us is the key of a modern festival. They are not passive viewers of things that are on a wall, more beautiful or less beautiful, more interesting or less interesting. Obviously, we have 21 exhibitions. They are huge, they are amazing, everything. But we always focus on the importance of the workshops because we do think that for coming from the other side of the world to Barcelona, you need to have a huge excuse. And this excuse is to get together with the most important specialist of this technique in the world. That is what we want people to do. And that's the reason why they're coming. We're focused on workshops. That's the main reason to come. This is a summer camp. You are going to get together with other people. You are going to sleep 6 days on the same place, having breakfast, lunch, dinner, going to parties together, and you are going to be able to make connections. Also, something that is different from other festivals is horizontality. All the artists are staying also the full week with us, and they are also doing other workshops. I mean, they are teaching, but they're also receiving. That means that you can stay on the same workshop with a professor and students at the same time. Everyone is totally horizontal. That's good, and that is mandatory for our artists. They need to come to all the activities. It's not that these kind of people that you just call them and they say, okay, I'm going to make a conference and then I'm leaving. I'm saying, no, you are not leaving. Or, I mean, if you're coming, you're staying, because people is going to learn more from you grabbing dinner with you or dancing than really what you have to say, because what you have to say is already in YouTube. What you are going to talk on a conversation is not possible outside of the context of the festival. That's why the relationships and the reflections that are happening on the festival are not happening in other places. And also for us, it's really important to come because we have a portfolio review with 7 curators from all over the world. If you participate of the portfolio review, the curators can choose your work for being exhibit. Last year, we had 6 or 7 also exhibitions in 7 countries of the world, and the next will happen next year. We don't want just people to come. We want to create opportunities for our community to go outside and to show what they are doing. The other thing that I want to mention are 2 things that I also talked about the IPFA meeting. One is the economical transparency. You can even get now to a webpage. There is a page for economical transparency, and you can get where all the fundings come and where we spend all the money. I mean, you have all the economical information, and you also have the information for the gender equality. That's a huge problem that we have in culture in general, but in photo festivals also, is that the biggest part of the participants are women, but the biggest part of the professors or artists are men that are chosen for the festivals. And that's why we decided from the first festivals to unite to a Spanish association that works for the place of women in arts. And we start with them having 40% of women in our festival selected. This is the biggest criteria that we use for choosing in all our activities. There must be at least a 40%. But then last year we saw, because we always have between 50 and 60, we always have more. And then a couple of years ago, we realized that we have between 60 and 70% of the participants were women. And also in our school, we have between 60 and 70% of students. And we say, okay, but why we have just 50% of female photographers as artists if we really have between 60 and 70 as students or 60 and 70 as participants? We need to have at least between 60 and 70% of women also as artists. We need to have the same amount of participants than artists, and that's why we have pulled up our percentage of women selected as artists coming for the festival in between 60 and 70. This year we have 73 or 74. You can check the updated information on our webpage. And that is one of the things that we want to talk about also at IPFA for the rest of the festival, trying to engage them to work for a more equal world for women in the future.
Yeah. Oh, is there a theme each year? Like a lot of festivals have a theme or a thematic focus.
No, because our thematic focus is experimental photography.
Yeah, okay.
What we do is mixing as much as techniques as possible and also gender equality. That means that if we have one working with cyanotype in Spanish and one in cyanotype in English, might be hard that you are selected. We have one on cyanotype, one in anthotype, one in digital, one in slit scans, in each of the techniques, we have at least one representant. And that is kind of the criteria. But we don't have a theme because we have also had pretty bad experiences with these kind of themes, because they say, okay, the theme is the future. And then you see the exhibitions, and then you say, okay, this one is related with future, but this one is not. Why you have chosen this exhibition and it's not linked?
Okay.
From our perspective, we know that themes might get easier for people to have a more homogeneous festival, but in the biggest part of the places, using these themes is just kind of an excuse for not selecting some of the exhibitions or the proposals. That's why we don't really like having a theme, and we don't really think we need it. And then in the end, if the theme is so abstract, then it makes no sense. You know what I mean?
Yes,
it can be
absolutely.
used for selecting a good image, but not really for. In some point, it's kind of confusing, at least from my perspective. It's kind of confusing, and that is something else that I want to comment now that we have time and we are open to kind of more debates. Something that we always debate is about open calls. How the festivals choose their program. From our side, 95% of our content come from open calls.
Wow, okay.
All of them are free, but not the one for exhibitions. But the rest of them are for free. You can send, we receive 300 proposals, 400, and then our team choose. We don't have external curators because we know that the curators come with their own projects. We prefer everyone to be able, I just smile when I say curators. They bring their own projects. We want to have the opportunity to everyone to send a proposal. That is, from our side at least, the most democratic way of doing things, because everyone has the opportunity to send. And that is something that we want to ask to all the festivals of the world. How many of your exhibitions comes from an open call? That means that from a democratic way. If not, you're choosing them because you know someone that knows someone, or you went to a festival and then you choose an exhibition, then you exchange in exhibition. I mean, those kind of things are good. But when you have been doing a festival for 10 years, it's good that you open your mind to other proposals, and also that these proposals can be from young students. The biggest part of the festivals, they have 20 exhibitions, for example, and they have 3 or 4 that comes from the open call. The rest of them come directly selected by the curator, the director, or someone we don't know who is part of the organization, or the brands that collaborate with the festival. That's why we want to have a reflection also in the context of IPFA about how we choose the artists, how many opportunities we're really giving to young photographers to be part of this worldwide community of festivals. If not, that is deceiving for young people. They don't want to send proposals because they know that the names are always the same. That maybe they're investing 20 euros and you're always selecting the same artists everywhere, because there are these kind of worldwide fashions and years, and all the festival put these names and then these names and then these names. And I think we need to have a debate about this. I don't know, what is your opinion about this thing of the open calls? You can be polite and just say, I don't have an opinion, and you can just keep the question.
I mean, I think they are important because it does give people an opportunity then to have their work selected. And I think as well, I suppose the difference when curators are selecting work, so if I want to play devil's advocate here, is that maybe you're aware of the photographer's work and you know a bit more about their history and you know what they have done, and you know that their project that they're showing is part of a longer line of work. And obviously it's subjective and it is somebody's point of view. And maybe as well, the curators also have they feel that they have a duty to the audiences as well, that they need to show a certain level or a certain quality of work. And maybe when you're having a theme, if I'm thinking about my own experience when I was curating shows at my gallery, we would often use themes because we were presenting artists that people didn't know. My thinking as a novice when I was putting the shows together was that if I put together an exhibition around a topic, if I do a show about new approaches to abstract photography or interpretations of landscape, the idea of the theme was that, or having a thematic focus between group shows, particularly of unknown artists, was that maybe has resonance for people that wouldn't know otherwise if they're just going to say, I'm going to see John Smith's photography because I don't know who that guy is. But if it's like talking about Pere Català, I'm saying his name
Catalan,
right.
Yes.
Yeah, but if I just said we have an exhibition of him, or we have an exhibition of this significant Catalan photographer who was part of the experimental photographic movements, he was, a significant contributor to all of these different things that happened throughout history. Like, oh, okay, now I know, like, I need to go and see this because this is important. And having that, maybe that framework or that context makes it easier, perhaps, for less familiar audiences to access things. I've gone way off topic.
No, I think you are saying that names are good, curated exhibitions are good. I'm also saying that, but I'm saying if you have 20 exhibitions, please give at least 4 to emerging artists coming from open call. And then you can curate from that open call. Obviously, all the open calls might be curated. Afterwards, you receive 200 proposals and you need to choose the best 4 of them. But at least make part of your festival as open as possible for emerging artists to send proposals, because we want young people to get involved. That's the thing.
Yes.
If not, we're just keeping them outside of the canon. And that is what happens, because in the future, if we don't engage these young people, they are not going to be in our festivals and we're just going to be alone talking between ourselves and nothing else. That's kind of, I think, what we need to do. And that's why I think we need to be aware of how we choose artists, and that we can't anymore. At least in the past, it was the best way of doing things, just putting 20 big names. All of them were men. Now we need to rethink how we choose them. Obviously, you can put a couple of names, 1 man, 1 girl, 2 or something, and then you can give opportunities to young people also, because photography has changed a lot over the last 20 years.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I'm probably just thinking of some of the festivals, and they generally have a nice mix because they need to meet the needs of different audiences. And so if you think, like we were talking about Arles before, you'll have a handful of big names, which maybe I don't need to go and see because I've already seen their work. I'm not someone that's new to photography. For me, the discovery section is the most interesting, or I'm going to go see where other like emerging work is, because I want to go and see what the kind of next generation is doing. But I'm different to someone that's just interested in, there are certain people that want to see big names because they just like to go to see photography. And then if they discover something else, then that's great. But they might not necessarily go out of their way for new things and things that haven't been tested and checked out. And maybe, it's also probably part of how I experience a lot of things. We were talking a little bit about music before. Like, I would go and see local bands. I would go to a club to see 4 bands that no one's ever heard of, to see what new music that they're making. Whereas if I told to other people, do you want to come and see a gig with me? It's like, who's playing? I don't know. There's 4 bands. I've never heard of them. I want to go and see what they're doing. Most people would say, are they playing songs that I know? It's like, no, that's the point. We're going to go see what they're doing. Like, that to me is exciting. But I'm open to open calls and I want to see different things. I know that a lot of people aren't. So it's finding a balance, I think. It's finding we need a few big names, a few, let's say, medium-sized names, or people that have kind of achieved a level of success and acclaim. And then when people have already let their guard down a little bit, then we can kind of introduce other new things. But yeah, it's kind of getting a good mix of the two, I think.
I think these are the kinds of debates we need to have in the meeting of IPFA.
Yeah, I'm all for that. Yeah.
That is why we are coming here, to have these kind of debates. That's the way we are going to be able to learn from others and think what we are doing, trying to find new ways of doing things, for also engaging new people, engaging new photographers, give the festivals a new way of doing, a new modern way. That's why I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is important to find different ways of doing things. And what I've also really liked about kind of your approach to the conference that's coming up, and also the Experimental Photo Festival, is your emphasis on community and bringing people together, and how even when you describe the festival, it's more like a summer camp where everybody is kind of everyone's taken out of their comfort zone. We're all put together. We're all living together for a week. We're doing workshops. We're partying, and we're really having a community experience. Like, we're interacting the way that humans are supposed to interact, not in front of screens, but face to face.
Yes, for us, that's the most important. I mean, at least the way we think photography must be is a community way. I mean, we are too tired of doing things alone. At least that's my experience and the experience of a lot of people that I know, and also in the experimental community. if you're a minority, you need to get friends to support you. And the only place when you are going to find that might be a festival. I mean, a festival might be a big party to celebrate our relationships with photography, to experience photography from a different way. And we believe that way is a community way. We are going to find a future of photography with that. And that's also because photography has become something so diverse, so complex, so difficult. It's not like in the past that you buy a camera and you just go outside. No, you need to know a lot of things to do something new. That is something that you need to work with someone else. I mean, I have the feeling that it's mainly impossible to do something new if you are working alone. The only way is get together with other people, get their influence, give them something they are going to give you. And then with this, you can generate new ideas. If not, we're just scrolling the same ideas all over again and again and again. This is kind of a Bill-and-Flusser nightmare. And the only way is that's why I'm always saying to my students, they say, okay, but I don't have new ideas. And I say, okay, you have to go outside of photography, become an astrophysics, go to the sea. Or if you want to know yourself, if you want to do more something related with yourself, okay, start doing yoga. Go to a psychologist, think about yourself more, and then you will get inspiration. But that's the thing. Get together with others. Be interested in what others are doing. Go to people's gigs. Go to a biologist, to their work, everyday work, and see what they're seeing. Get inspired by that, by science, by sociology, by anthropology, by literature, I don't know, whatever you are interested in, but don't stay at home waiting for inspiration to come. That is kind of the way. And that is something that you just can do if you get together with others. Others has a lot of things to give you and to teach you. Get together, share, and from your side, maybe you're a photographer and the other one is a writer. Okay, let's go in a trip together to Nepal. Maybe it's not the best idea to go to Nepal as a general idea, but I mean, there are so many images from Nepal. That was kind of my first thinking. But, go to somewhere with someone, do a project together, learn from each other, find new inspiration. That's kind of the way. We need to work in a community. This solo way of doing things makes no sense nowadays, at least.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm always for community and collaboration, and I think it's always the best way for new ideas to emerge. And I've really enjoyed this conversation, Pablo. It's been really great to talk to you, to learn more about what you're passionate about. And I look forward to meeting in person in Barcelona later this year. I'm really looking forward to this conference, and I hope it all goes well. And this is a start of like a really important new movement in photography festivals, and the way that the kind of international community can come together and share photography.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael, for inviting me. And I just want to say finally that we were really also inspired by what you did, putting online that huge database with the first 300 festivals. With my team, we find 300 more. You have to update your database. You have a lot of work. But it was really inspiring seeing that someone has already tried, and has already get the idea of at least having all the information together. It was really inspiring. We take a lot of inspiration and information from your side. As you know, our database is also free for you to go and update yours. And thank you so much for inviting me to talk. Hope next time we are in Barcelona, it's going to be hot, it's going to be summer, we can grab a beer and get longer on these amazing conversations with other organizers of festivals. That will be my dream.
Yeah, likewise. I look forward to it. Thanks a lot, Pablo.
Thank you so much, Michael. Have fun. Enjoy the rest of your day.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Pablo Giori. In the show notes, you can find links to his personal website, as well as the International Photography Festivals Association, where you can find out more about the organisation, as well as the upcoming symposium in Barcelona. There's also a link to my photo festival database, which, in addition to the international festivals, includes photography-specific art fairs and photo book events. Don't miss the latest episode of Subtext and Discourse Art World podcast by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. If you think your friends or colleagues would enjoy the insights from my guests, please feel free to forward them a link to the show. You're also welcome to send any comments, feedback, or questions about this or previous episodes of the show, whether through the contact form on my website or via social media. That's all for now. Thanks again for tuning in. My name is Michael Dooney, and you've been listening to Subtext and Discourse.